When EVGA launched their AIO liquid coolers, I was immediately skeptical of their fan design, which are these FX series fans. Now this is the FX12, which is on their 120mm radiator fan mount AIO liquid coolers, and you could also buy them separately, obviously. And their 140mm fans are called the FX13, not 14, because that's logic. 12 to 13 instead of 12 to 14. Anyways, I was immediately skeptical because the fan design is completely different compared to normal fans. Because normal fans, you have a full frame around the fan blades that's trying to seal the air against the radiator from the fan blades. But in EVGA's case, they tried to swoop in the fan frame, then try to open it up more, and their argument was that it makes it quieter and perform better. So I was quite curious of how it will perform. So recently, I found these on eBay for $5 from EVGA's store, and I thought I'll pick one up and test it out. So here it is. For now, let's take a look at the build quality first. So the first thing about this fan is that it has no RGB LEDs or even any LEDs of any sort. It's just a typical plain black fan, and it's pretty much exactly the same as what you get in the AIO version, so it's kind of like, well, it's a pretty cheap fan, basically. That's what it is. And you can really feel it when you touch it because the fan is actually quite flimsy on the frame. As you can see, you can pretty much flex it all you want. And on the struts, they're pretty flimsy as well. And the fan blades are quite flimsy as well. So yeah, this is not a very high quality fan by any means. But if this does perform, that shouldn't be a problem. But for now, you can see that this is not very high quality, and I don't like the way they route the power cable. It's just that they have a too small of a gap on the strut for the power cable, and they kind of split it up into two and make it fit, but then use a piece of tape to hold it together instead of making it a bit wider and say make some proper notches to hold down the cables and make it fit with all four wires. So I don't really like that. It looks kind of ugly, but I don't think you'll notice it much in your PC case anyways. So for the measurements of the fan hub, it's about 47mm. I don't have a caliper, but I'm just using some eyeballing and my ruler, and it's about 47mm for the fan hub. It's not the largest, but it's also not the smallest either. It's kind of in the middle. For the fan blade diameter, it's actually only 110mm. So it's a whole 1 centimeter smaller than the 120mm spec. That's pretty much because of the frame design, which as you can see, leaves a huge gap between the fan blade and the frame itself. So the gap, as I measured it again with my eyeball and my ruler, it's about a little bit above 2mm. So that's quite massive. That's a really massive fan blade to frame gap. Even more so if you see it from the side here, because this area of the blade is even more gap. So yeah, you can pretty much think of this fan as basically an open air frameless fan, pretty much, because the frame doesn't really do anything to the fan blades. But yeah, that's pretty much about it for the fan physical itself. There's not much else to it. It's a pretty boring looking fan and pretty weird and funky looking one at it too. So let's get on to the performance testing of this fan. I'm testing it in my gaming rig / workstation PC, Nero PC, and it is tested on the rear radiator, which is cooling my RX 580 that's connected to the Thermaltake AIO liquid cooler using Liquid Ultra. It's also overclocked to 1500 MHz at a plus 100 mV overvolt, so it's quite a heat load, especially with my mining heat load that I'm using as a stress test, since a gaming load will provide varying heat load, so I decided to use a mining stress test instead. And here are the specifications from the factory, like the ones that are on the box, and pretty much most of them are pretty high up or quite in the middle of the pack for the EVGA fan, except for the noise levels, which is a little bit unbelievable in my opinion. They rated it at just 22 dBA. That's way too low. And here is the real life performance testing and results that I have gathered. And if you want to pause at either one of these, then feel free to do so.
And here is the noise testing at 100%, 50%, and also 0%, which is the lowest speed possible on free air.
So one more thing to add about the temperature testing. Those are measured in degrees Celsius and they're measured in delta to ambient. And I did calibrate it to my Noctua fan results from the first testing that I ever done before on my fan roundup, which you can check out over here. So I calibrated this fan compared to the Noctua currently, just in case the radiator has some kind of difference in temperature or like the room air temperature is kind of messing it up a little bit. So yeah, I corrected it to the Noctua's temperature by comparing it to that, so the temperature results should be quite accurate to about 1 degree or so. Now, looking at the results, it seems that this fan performs pretty well at full speed. It can pretty much hold its own against my other fans, even in pull, surprisingly, which is, this fan only lost 2 degrees in pull compared to push. And I was expecting it to reduce the performance even more in pull than in push, thanks to the unsealed frame design. But it didn't, it actually worked pretty well. But once you slow the speed down to 2000, 1500, and 1000 RPM, everything falls apart and pretty much this thing stays in the back as the worst fan ever on all of those except for when you use it on pull. So yeah, it actually can hold its own on pull compared to using it on push at the lower RPMs, which is again quite surprising because EVGA is shipping them as a push fan on their AIOs. Well, this thing performs better relatively to the other fans in pull. I don't know. I guess that's thanks to the weird fan design, which, if you also listen to the noise testing on the radiator against back pressure, it is also much noisier. So I'm not buying the frame design I'm not buying what EVGA said about the frame design meant to reduce noise, because all it did was make turbulent air noise all around when I'm using it on the radiator, even on pull. So that's quite annoying. I don't really like the fan noise profile of this fan. Although on free air, it is actually pretty quiet. I have to give them that. But on a radiator, the noise is just terrible. It's like this mishmash of like turbulent air noise and chopping helicopter blade sounds that is just not very pleasant, even though it's just air noise. Although the motor is very quiet, the air noise is just ridiculous. They have to redesign the fan blade or the frame or something. But yeah, I mean, this fan I get for $5. I mean, for $5 to get that kind of performance at full speed, that's not bad at all. It's close to the YS Tech fan, which is also $5. But at the lower speeds, this really falls apart. So I wouldn't really bank your money on this fan if you're looking to buy one of these. At least that's my opinion from my own testing. Anyways, that's it for this review of the EVGA FX12 fan. Let me know if you found it interesting or useful. I definitely did find this interesting because I've been really curious of how this fan performs. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised. It actually performs pretty well on pull. Like, it doesn't lose a lot of performance on pull compared to this thing on push. Although I wouldn't attest to it having good pull performance as much as this thing having terrible push performance. But yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, please click the like button, and if you want to see more of my future videos, please click the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.